Emma had never imagined her life would come to this, walking the cold, empty streets with nothing but a small bag clutched tightly in her hands. The winter wind cut through the thin layers of clothing she had, making her shiver uncontrollably, yet she kept moving, not just for herself, but for the two small twins she held close to her chest. Their tiny hands clung to her coat as if letting go would mean vanishing from the world entirely. Life had not been kind to Emma. She had once dreamed of a simple home, a small kitchen where laughter filled the rooms, and warm beds for her children, but those dreams had slowly crumbled, leaving only the harsh reality of survival on the streets. The twins, Lily and Lucas, were only 4 years old, but they already knew the sting of hunger and the chill of nights spent on concrete. They had never felt the softness of a proper mattress or the warmth of a steady fire. Every day was a challenge. A simple meal required courage and persistence. Emma scavenged through leftover food near restaurants, begged quietly on street corners, and sometimes relied on the kindness of strangers who were few and far between. Even the smallest acts of generosity, an extra sandwich, a blanket, or a cup of hot tea, felt like miracles, and she cherished them with a quiet gratitude. Despite the hardships, Emma never let the twins see her despair. She laughed when they giggled, told them bedtime stories with excitement, and made up games to keep them entertained. Their innocent smiles became the light in her dark world. Her heart ached when she saw their tiny faces look at her with trust, because she knew how fragile their little lives were. The city was both cruel and mesmerizing. Its towering buildings seemed to mock her with their glass and steel, shining under the sunlight, while she and the twins wandered in the shadows, trying to stay unnoticed, avoiding the harsh words of strangers and the police who sometimes moved them along. She had learned quickly which alleys were safe, which corners had warmth, and which people could be trusted. Some nights were the hardest. When the twins' small bodies trembled with cold and hunger, Emma would wrap them in the only blanket she had, whispering comforting words she barely felt herself. She would tell them stories of magical lands and kind strangers, hoping that even if the world was cruel, their imagination could give them comfort. She wished she could provide them a normal childhood, but she only had enough strength to keep them alive and hopeful. Emma had faced judgment from many, people passing by with quick glances, some giving pitying looks, others pretending she was invisible, yet she learned to ignore them. Her focus was only on the twins, their laughter, tears, and tiny hands needing hers. She became strong not because she wanted to, but because she had no choice. Survival demanded courage, and love demanded sacrifice. Even in the darkest moments, Emma never gave up hope. She believed that life could change, that somehow she and her twins would find a safe place to belong. The city had a rhythm of its own, and she felt that somewhere within it, a miracle could be waiting. It might sound impossible, but every morning, as she held Lily and Lucas close and watched the sun rise over the skyline, she felt a tiny spark of belief that things could get better. Her story was not just about struggle, it was about resilience, courage, and the extraordinary lengths a mother would go to protect her children. Emma had become a quiet hero of her own life, fighting invisible battles every day, not asking for recognition, only hoping for survival and safety for her twins. She knew that even the smallest act, a warm meal, a kind word, could make a difference, and she held on to that thought like a lifeline. And so, Emma moved through the streets with determination, carrying the weight of the world on her shoulders, yet she never let despair define her. For every tear she shed, every night spent shivering, she found a way to smile at the twins, telling them that tomorrow would be better, that even in the harshest winters, love and hope could survive, and deep inside, she prayed that somehow, life had a plan for them, one that would bring warmth, safety, and happiness to the little family she had fought so hard to protect. Alexander Reed lived a life that most people could only dream of. The glittering skyscraper he called home rose above the city like a monument to wealth and power. Inside, every detail was carefully designed, from the marble floors to the artwork that adorned the walls. His days were packed with meetings, deals, and luxurious events, yet despite all the abundance surrounding him, Alexander often felt a strange emptiness. A life of perfection on paper didn't mean a life of fulfillment. He had everything: fast cars, private jets, and a fortune that seemed endless, but the things money could not buy were missing. The warmth of a family, the laughter of children, and the simple joy of human connection had always eluded him. Every day felt predictable, a routine of calculated choices and polished smiles, until one evening, something happened that would break through the barriers he had built around his heart. It started with a walk through the city, something he rarely did, preferring the quiet of his penthouse and the controlled atmosphere of his offices, but that night, Alexander wanted to escape the suffocating world of power and status, to feel something real, something unpredictable. He wandered down dimly lit streets, past closed shops and flickering streetlights, letting the cool night air brush against his face. And then he saw her, Emma, huddled in a doorway with the two tiny twins, their small forms wrapped in ragged clothes, shivering under a thin blanket. Alexander paused, unsure why he felt compelled to approach. He had seen the homeless before, but something about this scene felt different, something in the way the children clung to Emma, the quiet determination in her eyes, tugged at a part of him he didn't know existed. Emma noticed him immediately, her eyes wary, scanning his expensive suit, the confident stride of someone who clearly did not belong in her world. She tightened her grip on Lily and Lucas, ready to retreat if needed, but Alexander didn't judge or demand. He simply knelt down, speaking in a calm, gentle voice. "Are you okay? Do you need help?" Those simple words startled Emma. She wasn't used to strangers asking, really asking, if she was okay. Most people either looked away or offered empty pity, but Alexander's gaze was different, sincere and attentive, and it unnerved her. Yet a small flicker of hope sparked inside. The twins peeked from behind her coat, their wide eyes curious, and Emma felt a strange mixture of caution and relief. She hesitated, unsure how much to reveal, but then, almost instinctively, she spoke the words that would change everything. "These twins live with me." Her voice was quiet but firm, as if declaring a truth that had kept her going for years. Alexander froze, struck by the weight of the statement. It wasn't just about survival, it was a declaration of love, sacrifice, and courage. For Alexander, life suddenly felt different. The city noises faded into the background, and all he could see were the small faces of the twins, the determination etched into Emma's expression. In that moment, he realized that wealth, power, and status meant nothing compared to the raw, unfiltered human struggle before him. His perfectly ordered world had never prepared him for this kind of reality. Despite his usual caution, he felt an urge to act, to offer help, to step into a story that was nothing like his own. Yet he didn't want to frighten Emma, didn't want to seem patronizing, so he simply extended his hand in friendship, saying, "Let's figure this out together." And Emma, weary but sensing his sincerity, nodded, feeling the first glimmer of trust she had allowed anyone to see in years. That night, Alexander returned home with a sense of purpose he had never known. He couldn't stop thinking about Emma and the twins, about the courage it took to survive each day on the streets, and for the first time in years, he felt alive, aware of the fragility and beauty of life, ready to step out of his carefully constructed world and into one filled with unexpected connections. Little did he know, that brief encounter, sparked by a simple, powerful statement, would not only change the lives of Emma and her twins but shatter the meticulously controlled world of a billionaire, introducing chaos, love, and hope in ways he had never imagined. The night air was crisp, carrying the faint hum of the city that never truly slept. Alexander had just walked away from the street corner where he first saw Emma and the twins, yet her words echoed in his mind. "These twins live with me." There was something in the simplicity of her statement, something raw and unfiltered, that refused to leave him. It wasn't just a declaration, it was a force, shaking the very foundations of his controlled, predictable life. He had spent decades building walls around his heart, insulating himself from chaos, emotion, and unpredictability, but in that brief encounter, a single phrase from a homeless girl had penetrated those walls with the force of a hurricane. Alexander felt a strange mix of curiosity, awe, and responsibility stirring within him. A part of him, the part he rarely acknowledged, longed to step into her world, to understand her struggles firsthand. Meanwhile, Emma walked the cold streets with the twins, unaware of the storm she had set in motion. Lily and Lucas chattered softly, their small hands intertwined, and Emma smiled, trying to ignore the ache in her stomach from the day's meager meals. She hadn't expected anyone to truly notice them, let alone someone as different as Alexander, a billionaire. Someone whose life was so far removed from hers that it felt like a story from another universe, had actually listened. Her voice, though quiet, carried the weight of years of sacrifice, sleepless nights, and relentless fear. "These twins live with me," she repeated in her mind as she tucked the children into a corner beneath a bridge. Her words weren't just for Alexander, they were a mantra, a shield against despair, a reminder that no matter how hopeless life seemed, she had someone to fight for, and that fight gave her strength. For Alexander, those words haunted him, waking him in the middle of the night, lingering in the spaces between meetings, dinners, and boardroom negotiations. He found himself thinking of the twins' small faces, the innocence in their eyes, and the unshakable determination of their mother. Questions he had never asked himself before began surfacing. How does one survive without the safety net of money? How can love persist in a world of scarcity and hardship? What would it mean to truly help someone without expecting anything in return? The phrase became a magnet, pulling him toward a reality he had never known. He replayed the encounter over and over in his mind, each time noticing details he had missed, the way Emma's eyes glimmered with resilience, the soft rhythm of the twins breathing as they clung to her, the small acts of care she performed even in the coldest moments. He realized that this simple statement was more than a plea for help. It was a challenge, a test of his humanity. Alexander couldn't ignore it, no matter how much he tried. The carefully planned world of luxury, power, and control felt hollow compared to the raw authenticity of Emma's life. He began researching, asking around quietly, trying to find out more about the girl and her children, not out of curiosity alone, but from a deeper impulse he hadn't felt in years, a desire to make a real difference, to step outside his comfort zone. And then came the moment he knew he had to act. The words resurfaced with clarity, almost demanding attention. These twins live with me. They weren't just words anymore. They were a call, a bridge between two lives that should have never crossed, yet had collided in the most extraordinary way. Alexander understood, for the first time, that life wasn't about plans, contracts, or status. It was about connection, about impact, about the courage to reach out when it mattered most. He returned to the streets where he had first seen them, feeling a mixture of hesitation and anticipation. What if Emma didn't trust him? What if the twins were afraid? What if he couldn't truly help? All these doubts crowded his mind, but the memory of her words, filled with honesty and raw emotion, pushed him forward. He knew one thing for certain: life would never be the same after this encounter. Emma's simple statement, uttered with courage and necessity, had not only shattered the predictable world of a billionaire but had opened a door to something far greater, something neither of them could have imagined, a journey that would challenge, transform, and redefine everything they thought they knew about family, love, and the power of human connection. The night air seemed different now, alive with possibility, as Alexander approached, ready to step into a life-changing story that had already begun with a single, unforgettable line. Alexander had never felt a clash like this before. The worlds he had carefully constructed, one of control, wealth, and order, were colliding with a reality he had never imagined. Emma's life was raw, unpredictable, and full of hardships that no amount of money could erase. Yet here they were, forced into the same space, their lives suddenly intertwined by the courage of a homeless girl and the curiosity of a billionaire. At first, Alexander tried to keep his usual composure. The penthouse, with its sleek furniture, towering windows, and polished floors, suddenly felt alien to Emma, who instinctively touched surfaces to gauge their coldness, who stared at the plush couches as if they belonged in a dream. Her presence, innocent yet determined, was disrupting the rhythm of his life, and he noticed it immediately. The twins ran around, their laughter echoing in the silent rooms, a sound Alexander realized he had never truly heard before. Emma, on the other hand, felt out of place. Every corner of the mansion reminded her of everything she had never had: warmth, comfort, and safety, and she couldn't help but feel small, intrusive, and unworthy. She worried that Alexander would see her as weak, incapable, or pathetic, and that fear made her cautious with every movement. Every polite nod, every soft "thank you," carried the weight of years of survival instincts. But the real tension began when their differences clashed openly. Alexander, used to planning every second of his day, became impatient with the unpredictable nature of Emma's life. Simple matters, like meal times, cleanliness, or schedules, turned into arguments, not because either of them was wrong, but because their worlds spoke completely different languages. Emma, protective of her twins and her independence, resisted his control, fearing that accepting help would mean giving up everything she had fought to protect. At night, Alexander lay awake, listening to the faint sounds of the twins whispering to each other, feeling a mix of guilt and awe. he realized that his carefully ordered life had shielded him from the chaos and beauty of human vulnerability, and Emma, in her corner, felt the weight of responsibility pressing down, aware that every decision she made now affected not just her children, but the man who had unexpectedly entered their lives. Yet amidst the friction, small moments of connection began to appear. Alexander noticed how Emma's hands never hesitated when caring for the twins, how her eyes sparkled with determination, and how even in fear, she radiated courage, and Emma, despite her mistrust, saw that Alexander was learning, listening, trying, not just with his wealth, but with his heart. She began to sense that maybe, just maybe, he could be trusted, not as a savior, but as a partner in the chaotic, beautiful dance of survival and love. The real conflict wasn't just about routines or possessions, it was about identity and control. Alexander had to confront the uncomfortable truth that money could not fix everything, that his life of precision had gaps, emotional, moral, and spiritual, that Emma's world, despite its hardships, had filled with love and resilience. Emma had to confront her own fears, accepting that help didn't mean weakness, and that vulnerability could sometimes be a bridge, not a trap. The twins, oblivious to the adult tensions, became silent teachers, showing Alexander the magic in laughter, the bravery in innocence, and the joy of small victories. For Emma, their presence reinforced her decisions, reminding her why she kept fighting, why she resisted despair, why every small gesture mattered. Days passed in a whirlwind of clashes and compromises, Alexander learning patience, Emma learning trust, and both of them discovering a strange symmetry between their worlds. What seemed like chaos was slowly becoming balance, and what started as friction was slowly transforming into understanding. The mansion, once a symbol of cold perfection, was now alive with warmth, unpredictability, and life. And yet, the tension remained palpable, for both Alexander and Emma knew that the outside world, and even their own fears, could threaten this fragile connection. The collision of worlds was far from resolved, but in that very collision, they were discovering something neither had experienced before: the power of human connection, resilience, and the quiet miracles that happen when two very different lives meet. Alexander sat in his penthouse late at night, the city lights stretching endlessly beneath him, yet instead of the usual satisfaction he felt after a long day of meetings and decisions, he felt a strange unrest. The image of Emma and the twins haunted him, replaying in his mind like a film he couldn't pause. He thought about their small hands, the way Lily clung to her mother's coat, and how Lucas' eyes lit up with curiosity despite hunger and cold. He had spent a lifetime protecting his world, guarding it against chaos, unpredictability, and emotion, but Emma had introduced a kind of chaos that he couldn't control, and for the first time, he realized that maybe he didn't want to. There was a life outside his structured, luxurious bubble, a life that was messy, fragile, and full of raw beauty, that demanded more than money could buy. Alexander made a decision, one that surprised even him. He would open his world to Emma and the twins, not as an act of charity, but as an act of humanity. He understood that this choice would disrupt his routine, challenge his expectations, and expose him to emotions he had long buried, but he felt a quiet certainty in his heart that this was the right thing. The words Emma had spoken echoed in his mind again. "These twins live with me." They were more than a statement, they were a call, a doorway into a new reality he hadn't dared to imagine. The next morning, he returned to the street where he had first met them, carrying not just gifts or food, but a promise. He found Emma carefully holding Lily and Lucas, her eyes wary, scanning the streets as if danger could appear from anywhere. Alexander approached slowly, his hands empty but open, his gaze steady, showing neither pity nor condescension, only respect and sincerity. "I want you to come with me," he said quietly, choosing his words carefully. "I can't promise it will be easy, but I can promise safety, warmth, and a place for the twins to grow." Emma froze, her mind racing. Conflicting emotions battled within her: fear of losing independence, mistrust of his intentions, and the faintest spark of hope she hadn't felt in years. The twins clung to her, sensing the tension in the air, their small faces looking to her for guidance. Emma took a deep breath, searching Alexander's eyes for any hint of deception, but all she saw was honesty, a genuine desire to help, and perhaps, unknowingly, to learn from them as much as they would from him. Finally, with a trembling voice, she nodded. "Okay, we'll come." It wasn't easy to surrender control, but for the sake of the twins, she made the choice. As they stepped into Alexander's world, everything felt surreal. The mansion, once cold and imposing, seemed softer with the presence of life and laughter. The twins ran freely, exploring, touching, and marveling at things they had never seen before, and Alexander watched, realizing that the mansion wasn't just a home, it was a canvas, ready to be filled with memories, love, and the chaos of life. Over the next few days, small adjustments were made, compromises formed, and boundaries tested. Emma insisted on keeping the twins' routines, Alexander offered guidance without pressure, and slowly, they began to build a fragile but real sense of harmony. It wasn't perfect, and it wouldn't be, but it was alive, vibrant, and deeply human. Alexander realized that opening his world wasn't about giving them wealth or luxury, it was about connection, trust, and learning to share life beyond material comforts. Emma realized that accepting help didn't make her weak, it made her brave, willing to step into a world that was foreign, yet full of opportunity for her children, and through it all, the twins became the bridge, their laughter, curiosity, and innocence softening the edges of fear and doubt. In that decision, both Alexander and Emma discovered a truth neither could have predicted. Sometimes, life's most meaningful changes come from the courage to open your world, to trust, and to embrace the unknown. The billionaire had opened his carefully controlled life, and in doing so, he found that wealth could never match the richness of love, family, and shared human experience, and Emma, for the first time in years, felt that maybe her fight had not been in vain, that there was a world where hope, safety, and joy could exist. Life in Alexander's mansion was nothing like Emma had imagined. At first, everything felt overwhelming, the polished floors, the endless rooms, the silent opulence that seemed to judge every step she took, but slowly, she began to notice something she hadn't felt in years, safety, and the possibility of normalcy. The twins, Lily and Lucas, ran freely, laughing without fear, exploring spaces that had once felt like distant dreams, and Emma felt a quiet warmth in her chest. Alexander, too, was changing in ways he never anticipated. He had always believed that wealth and control could solve problems, yet in caring for Emma and the twins, he discovered lessons no amount of money could teach. He learned patience in moments when Lucas refused to eat or Lily clung to Emma in fear, understanding that love often required flexibility and empathy rather than force. He learned humility, realizing that no amount of intelligence or power could prepare him for the chaos and unpredictability of real life. The twins taught him joy in small things, watching Lily chase sunlight across the floor, listening to Lucas' excited questions about the world, seeing them discover colors, textures, and laughter that had been absent in their short lives. Alexander had once believed that success was measured in numbers, contracts, and accolades, but now he saw that the real measure of life was connection, love, and the happiness of those around him. Emma, meanwhile, discovered her own strengths anew. She realized that accepting help didn't diminish her courage or independence, it amplified it. By allowing Alexander into their lives, she was teaching her children that trust, collaboration, and vulnerability were not weaknesses but bridges to a better life. She also saw a side of Alexander she hadn't expected, a man capable of kindness, understanding, and genuine care, someone who could learn as much from her family as she could from him. Together, they created routines that balanced both worlds. Meal times became moments of laughter and storytelling rather than stress. Alexander joined in bedtime routines, reading stories to the twins and sharing small jokes that made them giggle uncontrollably. Emma allowed Alexander to help with chores and organization, slowly letting go of the fear that independence meant isolation. The mansion, once a symbol of control and perfection, transformed into a home filled with warmth, life, and messy but beautiful moments. The emotional transformation went deeper than daily routines. Alexander found himself reflecting on his past choices, realizing how much time he had spent chasing achievements while neglecting human connections. He began to appreciate the little acts of courage Emma had taken every day to protect her children, the resilience that had kept them alive, and the love that persisted despite scarcity and hardship. It was humbling and inspiring in equal measure, and it reshaped his understanding of success, wealth, and purpose. For Emma, life lessons were equally profound. She learned that accepting change and trusting others could create opportunities she had never dreamed possible. She saw that kindness could come from unexpected places, and that building relationships was as valuable as survival itself. and most importantly, she realized that her children didn't have to bear the weight of struggle alone, that a life of safety, joy, and growth was possible without abandoning her principles or love. The twins were the quiet catalysts of transformation. Their laughter broke tension, their curiosity inspired wonder, and their small acts of affection reminded both adults of the beauty in simplicity. Alexander and Emma found themselves laughing more, worrying less, and celebrating moments that might have once seemed insignificant, yet these moments became the foundation of a new life. A life defined not by wealth or survival alone, but by love, growth, and shared humanity. By the end of the first month, Alexander and Emma both recognized that their lives had been irrevocably changed. They had grown in patience, empathy, and understanding, learning lessons no classroom or boardroom could teach, and though challenges remained, the transformation was undeniable. A billionaire had learned the power of vulnerability, a homeless mother had discovered trust in humanity, and the twins thrived at the center of a world filled with love and hope, proving that life's greatest riches were often found in the hearts of those willing to embrace change. Life in the mansion was no longer just about survival or luxury, it was about learning to coexist, to trust, and to grow together. Alexander and Emma had both changed, but change brought its own set of challenges. For all the warmth and love that now filled the home, old habits, fears, and differences continued to surface, reminding them that blending two completely different worlds was never simple. The first challenge came from expectations. Alexander was used to order and precision. He scheduled meetings down to the minute, planned every detail of his life, and expected the same from those around him. But Emma and the twins lived in a world of unpredictability, governed by immediate needs, emotions, and survival instincts. There were mornings when breakfast was late, or Lucas spilled his juice on important documents, or Lily cried uncontrollably for a story she wanted repeated for the fifth time. Small moments, yet they tested Alexander's patience like nothing ever had. Emma struggled too. She was fiercely independent, having spent years fending for her children without relying on anyone. She resisted Alexander's guidance at times, fearing that accepting too much help would erase the strength she had built. The twins, although joyful, often tested boundaries, climbing furniture, running through hallways, and insisting on their own little routines. Sometimes Emma and Alexander clashed over discipline, schedules, or even small decisions about the twins' lives. Each disagreement was a reminder of how different their worlds were. But with every challenge came growth. Alexander slowly learned that flexibility was more powerful than control, that love and guidance required patience, not commands, that listening and observing were as important as instructing. He discovered that chaos could be beautiful, messy moments could teach valuable lessons, and laughter could heal what money never could. Emma watched in amazement as the man who once lived by rules and contracts adapted to the unpredictable rhythm of life with children. She realized that change was not only possible, but sometimes necessary. The twins became the bridge between them, teaching lessons that neither adult expected. Lucas, with his endless questions, showed Alexander how curiosity could open minds, how imagination could inspire solutions, and how joy often came in small, unexpected moments. Lily, with her gentle, persistent affection, taught Emma that trust could be given cautiously but still flourish, that love could grow in spaces once thought impossible. Their laughter, tears, and tiny victories became shared experiences that strengthened bonds and softened tensions. Together, they began creating new routines, a blend of structure and spontaneity. Breakfasts became lively with storytelling and playful banter. Alexander learned to join in, laughing at Lucas' exaggerated tales and Lily's imaginative games. Emma allowed herself to delegate small tasks, seeing Alexander's sincere effort to help. Even chores became moments of connection, as the adults worked side by side, talking, laughing, and learning each other's strengths and weaknesses. Challenges didn't disappear entirely, and they never would, but each obstacle was met with patience, understanding, and compromise. Alexander learned to let go of perfection, to embrace mistakes as lessons rather than failures. Emma learned that accepting help didn't make her weak, but allowed her children to thrive, and both discovered that communication, empathy, and trust were more valuable than any material comfort. As the weeks passed, bonds grew stronger. The mansion, once a symbol of isolation and precision, became a home, filled with warmth, noise, and the unpolished beauty of real life. Alexander and Emma shared small victories, Lucas learning to tie his shoes, Lily finally finishing a painting she had been working on for days, and quiet moments of reflection where the adults simply watched the children sleep, feeling gratitude for the fragile yet unbreakable threads of connection they had woven. By the end of this stage, the transformation was clear. The challenges they faced had become the building blocks of trust and love. Their differences no longer drove them apart but taught them how to grow together. Alexander was no longer a man defined by wealth and control. Emma was no longer defined by fear and survival alone, and the twins thrived in a world where love and laughter were abundant. Together, they had learned the greatest lesson of all: true bonds are forged in the fires of challenge, nurtured with patience, and strengthened by shared growth. Life had settled into a rhythm, yet it was unlike anything Alexander or Emma had ever known. The mansion no longer felt like a pristine, empty palace. It had become a home, alive with laughter, warmth, and the tiny footsteps of twins exploring every corner. Alexander often paused in the hallways to watch Lily and Lucas, noticing how freely they moved, how brightly their eyes sparkled, and how their joy filled spaces that had once felt cold and sterile. Emma had found a new kind of strength, one that didn't rely solely on survival but on trust, collaboration, and love. She had let go of the constant fear of being alone and vulnerable, and in doing so, she had discovered that accepting help didn't diminish her courage, it amplified it. The twins thrived in this environment, experiencing comfort, stability, and joy for the first time in their lives. Their laughter became a melody that echoed through the mansion, a reminder of how far they had come. Alexander, too, had transformed in ways that surprised even him. The experience of stepping into a world so different from his own, and learning to care without control, had reshaped his understanding of wealth, power, and purpose. He realized that no fortune could replace the value of connection, empathy, and unconditional love. He had once measured success in numbers and accolades, but now he measured it in hugs, smiles, and the happiness of 2 children and a brave, resilient mother. Their bond had become unbreakable, not because life was perfect, but because they had faced hardships together, adapted, and grown. Each challenge had strengthened their connection, each small victory had built trust and love. Emma no longer saw Alexander as just a billionaire. He was a partner in life, someone willing to learn, change, and care deeply, and Alexander no longer saw Emma as someone to rescue. She was a teacher, a guide, and the heart of a family he never expected to have. The twins, at the center of it all, flourished like flowers in sunlight. Their world, once filled with uncertainty and fear, was now full of exploration, learning, and affection. Lily painted brightly colored pictures that adorned the walls, Lucas asked endless questions that sparked laughter and discussion, and together, they taught Alexander and Emma lessons in patience, joy, and the beauty of living fully in the moment. The family celebrated small milestones together: first steps, first words, first days at school. Each moment was cherished and recorded, not in ledger books or contracts, but in memories, photographs, and shared stories. Alexander found himself hosting casual dinners in a way he never had before, laughing freely, and embracing the imperfect, beautiful chaos of family life. While Emma felt a peace she had never thought possible, knowing her children were safe, loved, and thriving. Through it all, Alexander's perspective on life had shifted permanently. He no longer chased control or perfection, instead he embraced imperfection as a gateway to connection. He realized that the greatest wealth lay not in material possessions but in shared experiences, love, and growth. Emma had learned to trust again, to allow herself to hope, and to see that life could bring joy and stability without sacrificing her values or strength. The mansion, once a symbol of isolation and status, had become a sanctuary of love, laughter, and transformation, a place where the unlikely collision of worlds had created something extraordinary: a homeless girl's courage, 2 innocent children's resilience, and a billionaire's willingness to change had formed a family stronger than anyone could have imagined. As Alexander, Emma, Lily, and Lucas stood together one evening, watching the sun dip behind the city skyline, there was a quiet understanding between them. Life had not been easy, and it would continue to bring challenges, but they faced it together, stronger, braver, and more connected than ever before. The words that had started it all, "These twins live with me," had shattered old patterns and built something far more valuable, a life forever changed, filled with love, hope, and the certainty That true wealth lies in human connection, courage, and the bonds we choose to nurture.